Welcome to a tea party like no other. It's Wednesday Fridays on Tea Time with Afternoon Social. Grab your favorite teacup. Presenting Ruth Hovsepian, speaker, author, and podcast host. Good afternoon and welcome to Tea Time with Afternoon Social. And today is Wednesday Friday episode. I'm Theresa, your host, and our guest today is Ruth Hovsepian. She had a wonderful story to share yesterday on Triumphant Thursday, so if you didn't get to see that video, go back and check that out. But today, we're going to talk to her about using her podcast. She's a podcast host, a speaker, and an author. And in her podcast, she likes to share an outlook of hope, joy, and appreciating what we have instead of the what-ifs. And so I'm going to talk with her today about how she uses her podcast to share that message. Hi, Ruth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Theresa. Thank you for having me here today.
Well, explain to us a little bit about your podcast, and it's called Out of the Darkness, correct?
Correct.
Explain a little bit about the backstory of that, and what kind of information can we get through that podcast, or what kind of guests do we hear?
Well, as the title alludes, Out of the Darkness, it's us coming out of the darkness, and everybody's darkness is a little bit different. You know, we all start our journey at a different place, but we're all headed in the same direction. So I use my platform, my podcast, to really talk to people and bring guests that will share their own stories of transformation, of redemption, of hope. And that is what I want my listeners and viewers to get out of my podcast, that there is hope, that there is, anything can change. And it is a faith-based podcast. So there is always that element there that through Christ all is possible. And that if you're listening or watching the podcast, you will see that underlying theme on all of them. People who have come through traumas, whether it's a sexual abuse as a child, whether it's divorce, whether it's an addiction, it doesn't matter. There's always that underlying theme of hope for everyone.
Is there one particular message from a guest that still sticks in your mind that was really brought it home, or you understand what I'm saying, that really kind of
Well, actually, one of my last guests gave an example, and it was about the loss of a parent at a very young age. He was 7 when his father died, and how, it's what we do with our circumstances that matter. And he gave the best example, and I had never thought of this before. And I know my Bible quite well, I think. But it was the way that Peter and Judas reacted to the situation. So they were both disciples of Christ. Mm-hmm. They both rejected their, that knowing, said, no, I do not know him. And yet, at the end of the day, one repented of that and went on to do great things and fulfill the Great Commission. And the other one, instead of, coming down on his knees and asking for forgiveness for what he had done, he committed suicide. So the circumstances were the same. They went through the same thing, but it was how they responded to that circumstance is what the rest of their life, the trajectory for the rest of their life was. And I had to think about that after the podcast recording, because I had never thought of it that way. Yes, I knew the story of, Judas, killing himself, but I had never looked at it as such a great example of, we go through difficult things. We all do, just at different places. That's why I like to say we all start our journey at a different place. Right. But we are all going to the same place, right? Our ultimate goal is the same. So that was a great lesson for me. And I went, wow, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm the one that's learning so much with every podcast that I do, with every episode.
Mm-hmm. So that gave you all hope as well to continue in the path that you're heading. with all of the endeavors that you've got on all your fires. And
yes, yeah.
And your children now are adult children.
They are, yeah, all grown up. 2 are married. One is, they're serious enough that I think there's a wedding somewhere in the very near future. But I'm very blessed to have 3 adult children that are doing very well, and I thank God for that. Yeah, so in spite of me, in spite of me, I say.
It's that dual, in spite of, but yet because of.
That's what I am told. That's what I am told. I think we're our worst critics, and I always say, in spite of me, my children are who they are, and I am very proud of them. As a single mother, they have been my all. They were my world. They decisions I made in life were based on what I still do that. I love my children, and I say, in spite of me, they turned out so great. And I've been told, yes, it may be in spite of you, but also you had something to play. And I have to remember that, that I had some role in raising them and making them who they are.
Have you ever considered having one or all of them as guests on your podcast?
I have. No, I don't know how they'll react to it. I'm actually, I haven't told them this, so I hope they're not going to listen to this one, but I haven't told them that I would like to have all 3 of them on at the same time. And because that is an interaction that when people see the 4 of us together, they think we should have our own reality show. We're I can just shake my head. For those that are only watching this, they understand what I'm doing. But for only those listening, I'm shaking my head because we're crazy friends.
I understand that. I come from a real crazy family too.
Yeah.
But that, like you said, looking to the future and adding those things it does help with that hope and
yeah.
I think that would be an excellent episode for you with your family, especially when you're trying to share that message of hope and joy. And maybe that will be your season 3 opener.
Maybe, never know. Yeah. Great idea, Theresa. I'm going to put that down.
So season 2. So what are you focusing on with season 2? What kind of messages are you wanting to bring about here?
Yeah, you know what? It took. So here's the tricky part about all of this. I've recorded, and I'm so ahead of it that it's a weird journey that I'm taking, right? Because when I first started, I had a whole other intention with it. And as I'm growing and maturing and understanding what I can do on this platform and how I can bring out the best of people, I've kind of been changing and planning for things a little bit differently. And what I've learned in season 1, because season 1 is almost all wrapped up for me, and it's just a great place to be. But I'm planning 2024, my season 2. I realize I want to be even more intentional about talking about things that affect us and we struggle with and don't know how to deal with. Now, what that's going to look like will depend on the guests that I have and who comes on but I really want to address some really tough questions in season 2 because, the first one I was getting, I was sort of feeling things out and seeing how much I could push things. And I think 2024 is the nitty gritty. I really want to talk about very, specific things with my guests and push the envelope maybe a little bit and see how it goes.
Have you ever thought about your dream guest, like a celebrity or somebody that you would really like to interview or get to know more about?
Truth be told, no, I don't really have anyone like that. I think I like discovering people that don't have a platform and giving them a platform. There's two. You know what, Theresa? I think this is something I've struggled with from the time I was a teenager. When I was young, there was Teen Beat. I'm aging myself, right? All these magazines because we didn't have online.
Right.
And I didn't really have that kind of an idol in my life. I didn't. So even as an adult, yes, there are people that I like to listen to, read their books, and would love to have a conversation with. But it's not that I'd rather have them than someone else, because I think there's so much value in just the ordinary person and their experience and what they can bring to and share with us.
Yeah, and that's the way I see a lot of mine too. I'm not, I want to know the real stories. Like in the Bible, there's people that aren't even named.
That's right.
And they have a big message and to share. And that's, and I think that's where, like with my podcast, is I want to know real people's stories.
Yeah.
And we know that, and I think that adds to the hope and the joy and appreciating things, because we know it's for real. It's not just somebody on TV, and that has been had some 10 writers write out what they were going to say.
Yes, that's it. You've said it perfectly. That's my thought process as well. But I had never thought about all those unnamed characters in the Bible. I like that. See, this is what I take away from it. I have food for thought over there.
Yes, because I'm working on a project for a book that I'm putting together. But and thinking about like Mrs. Noah. What was Noah's mother?
Oh, I know.
Saying?
I've always thought about it. What about the blind man that Jesus healed? The first healing of a blind man. We don't know his name. The poor guy had spit on his eyeballs.
Yeah.
And we don't know his name. He had to walk with the mud all the way to wash up. We don't know his name. But what an awesome lesson that was for us.
Exactly.
Questions in our minds.
Right. But that's what makes it so interesting to get out there and meet people. Like yours from Canada.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of guests from South Africa and Australia. It's like it's interesting to find that even though we're across the world, we're all still kind of the same.
Yes. We have a bond, right?
We still connect. Yes.
Yes.
We're still connection because, and I think that, like you said, the connection through God.
Yes.
And that's why I think your podcast is a great one to get out some of those stories and find out those connections. And what's one of the episodes that you have coming up pretty soon that you'll be?
Oh gosh, one that I really wanted to do is Christians and yoga and the practice of yoga and looking at it through biblical viewpoint. And that was something that I really wanted to do. I had to find the right person to do that with. So that's an upcoming episode that was important for me. Yeah.
I might have somebody that you might think about.
Ooh, throw them my way. I love getting recommendations for guests because that's the best way. Recommendations are the best.
You're exactly right. Well, do you have one last anything to say more about what your podcast or anything before we close today?
No, just spend good time, learn and listen. And that's what these podcasts are for, all of us, that's what our podcasts are doing is giving an opportunity for someone to share and learn.
And with that, that's an excellent thing. If you would like to be on Ruth's podcast, all of her information is going to be listed in the comments below. I will put all of her links so that you can reach out to her if you'd like to be a guest or if you'd like to go watch her show. And I want to thank you again, Ruth, for being on here for Friends Day Fridays. And we will see you tomorrow for Show and Tell Saturdays. Thank you again, Ruth.
Thank you. It's been fun.